Savji Chatterjee, recording a weekly session of Chartsarefun. This is for the week of November 3rd, recording this on November 9th in early afternoon. Today, we're going to talk about two key things. One is there is an interesting Barron's article about Dow Jones hitting the next big milestone of 50,000. We'll talk a little bit about what the Dow Jones chart is telling us. We know that it's been successively getting faster and faster to the next 10,000 level. Of course, it's the laws of averages. The bigger the level is from where it starts, getting the next 10,000 is percentage-wise much easier. But we look at what the Dow Jones history has been on its climb from the first level of 10,000 that it hit in March 1999 to the last 40,000 key marker that it had hit in May 2024. So we look at the Dow Jones chart, we look at the transportation chart, which many have been calling as a laggard and pointing to the Dow theory. We'll talk a little about that. We'll look at the NASDAQ 100, QQQ, and the S&P 500 Equi-weighted RSP. That's an ETF for the S&P 500. And then today we will talk about a key topic called the IPO moment for Bitcoin. Jordi Visser, he is an ex-Morgan Stanley banker. He has a very interesting blog, a video on YouTube channel, and so on, talking about how Bitcoin, which is really the decentralized instrument, financial instrument, but if you think about the traditional banking and how they have their IPOs, Bitcoin currently is having that IPO moment. And he very well describes it that it's not that Bitcoin is losing buyers. If any, it's got buyers changing hands. The traditional whales call it, the big billionaires who have a large collection of Bitcoins are now finally finding liquidity to distribute or sell those Bitcoins to basically diversify their wealth. And the ones picking these up are the institutional buyers, the sovereign wealth buyers, picking them up in hordes and providing the liquidity for these billionaire whales to exit their some of their Bitcoin holdings. So that's kind of call it the IPO, how insiders start loading their shares to the shareholders. Bitcoin technically never had an IPO, but this is many ways with the prevalence of the ETFs, many ways a comparison of that IPO moment of Bitcoin is why we are seeing what we're seeing. But we will see by the deep-pocketed investors now picking up Bitcoin, hopefully lower volatility and stability in Bitcoin. And so we look at Bitcoin's chart, we look at the other core cryptos, Ethereum, Solana, and XRP. So with that, our Substack site is Chartsarefun, substack.com. We appreciate you subscribing to it. At 7 a.m. when the blogs come out, we'll email it to you as soon as they come out. And then our YouTube site is also Chartsarefun. We appreciate you subscribing to our channel. And if you like the videos, if you could hit the like button, we really appreciate that. The Barron's article I talked about Dow getting close to 50,000. Yes, it closed very close to 48,000. It had pulled back. It had reached a level above 49, pulled back about 1,500 or so points, reaching somewhere around mid 47. And so we look at what that Dow Jones target is, in fact, in the near term. The article, I'll share you the link of in the in the YouTube comment section. But the article talks about the the original creator of Charles Dow was created in May 26th, 1896. The index started off at somewhere around the 40 level. 103, a little over 103 years later, in 1999, it hit that level of 10,000. So the first 10,000 came at March 99. Then January 17 came the next 10,000. So 10,000 to 20,000. So that took quite a bit of almost close to 18 years. And then from there onwards, 20 to 30 happened in a little over 3 years, and then another 30 to 40 came in a little over 3 years. But this time, coming from 40 to close to 50, if we achieve it this year by end of the year, maybe early next year, we're talking about a year and a half or so, 18 months to get to that 10,000. And then it talks about futures that perhaps it'll climb 100,000 and to a million someday, and those would be the big moments. But right now, the market does not to care as much about that next 10,000 level. So now if you look at the Dow Jones Industrial chart, this is a daily chart, and this is a beautiful cup and handle. We can see a 45,100 at the peak late January. From there, it pulled back to 36,600 in the trade war kind of a low on April 7th, came up to 45. So that's a beautiful cup. the left brim being slightly higher than the right brim at 45,100, was the right brim at 45. So 36 to 45, you're talking about 8,400 points. At 8,400 points to 45, you're talking about 53,400. That's where Dow Jones is climbing, and that's where we believe this bull market is headed to. So as much as people think that, oh, there is a crash coming, if you do YouTube, you'll see everywhere that talks about crash. We believe that there's a very, very strong likelihood in the next couple of months, in fact, by seasonally strong parts of the climb in the market, by January or so, early part of next year, we'll likely reach that 53,400. We're already in that melt-up phase with AI-driven euphoria, the climb in stocks, and we believe that in that next leg up after this correction that we just saw, that 53,000 seems to be in the cards. So that's the cup and handle on the Dow Jones Industrial. And if you look at the transportation, it has had a beautiful cup as well, but yet to break out above its peak. So if you look at that 16,800, that was the peak in February, fell to 12,400. It's yet to take out that February peak. The last couple of attempts was 16,480, 16,495. So 16,500 has not yet been even taken out, which means it's 300 points short of the previous peak. But if this cup and handle, it's forming a long kind of a consolidation, kind of a pattern, call it a basing at 15,000 here to the 16,500. If that breakout comes in, there's significant upside. You're talking about 12,400 to 16,400, almost 4,000 points. At that there, it's about 20,500 is where the transportation index could go. And that had a good strong climb the last week. If you look at the entire week last week, while the market was pulling back, transportation was sending a positive signal. If any, Dow theory says that transportation sometimes lead and indicate strength in the economy. So in this particular case, transportation is actually doing well last week when the Dow Jones Industrial itself, since the comment from Chair Powell on the late October FOMC meeting that happened on October 29th, we can see that since then there's been a pullback to test its rising 50-day moving average and rebound off it and and close positive. It was Dow closed 75 points higher at 0.16%. So this reversal, testing the 50, successfully reversing higher, could mean that we've completed our correction, at least the near-term pullback, and could be the next climb higher is what we think that's possible. And the transportation index is giving us that positive indication that while the Dow Jones pulled down, the transportation actually was up the entire week, moving up, as you can see, the last 5 successive trading days. So this now headed to 16,200, 200 points from, or 300 points from the 16,500. If that key breakout comes, some kind of a momentum could come from the fundamental side. Maybe this long drawn out shutdown in the government is what the market would rejoice if that breakout comes out of that, because as we know right now, there is fears of a lot of airports being shut down, flights being canceled, and as a result, this transportation index, in spite of all that bearish momentum, had a positive week. And in fact, it was up 1.58% on the Friday. And now there is anticipation with the Thanksgiving holiday that the government will, in all likelihood, end this shutdown, make some form of a deal with the Democrats and the Republicans, and then that could lead to this transportation breakouts. Again, the breakout on the transportation, 12,470 to 16,480, that's 4,000 points. Added to 16,480, you're talking about 20,500 is where that level is. Now, what about the AI-driven, the technology index? It also had a pullback, same kind of a pullback from that October 29th when Chair Powell went down, kind of hawkish, saying that, don't expect a rate cut in December. We can see that 637 level pullback to test the 600 key level. It tested 598, rebounded, didn't close positive, unlike the Dow, but still it kind of had a reversal candle closing to where it kind of it opened near 608, closed near 609. So kind of a reversal, bullish reversal candle here, indicating that the decline might have ended after a successful test of that 50-day moving average. So from here, if you look at that cup and handle on this chart of QQQ, 538 to 401, back to 535, that's 134 points. Added to 535, that's 669. So 669 closer to 670 is where we think QQQ is headed. So on this reversal, on the success successful test of the 50-day, we could expect that climb towards that level, which is another 10% or so. So from 609 to 669, talking about 60 points, 60 points from a 609 is close to a 10% move, is what we expect could happen in the QQQ in the next few weeks. That's for us to look into. Now, Equi-weight is also flagging additional upside. We can say it did break out in the July timeframe above its February peak at 180. It hit 185, has been climbing higher highs, higher lows. And this pullback from 192 to a 192, this was two successive peaks from where it failed. Bear started calling it as a double top. So 192 failed twice. For that to be validated, you need a break. If it's an M-shaped double top, you need that the EQ weight S&P 500 ETF RSP to break below 185. 185 to 192, 7 points. Subtract that from 185, you're talking about close to 178 or so, which is where this level is from where we tested kind of early August, that correction that we had in early August. So that's what the bears would be looking at, a 7-point drop from 185 to 178. But if this was a successful test, it did close up 0.84%. So it did reverse higher. It did dip below the 50-day moving average, however, so that's why the bears were worried about. But if you look at the lows, it was 185.35. That's above the previous low from October at 185.09. So this could be a double bottom test, 185 tested twice, and then from here recovery and break above that 192. The measured target on this cup and handle, 180 to 149 up to 178. If you add that, the depth of that cup from 149 to 178.67, you're talking about roughly close to what 30 points. 30 to 149 gives you 179.09, and then subtract about 42 points or so from that. So you're talking about roughly $29 dollars and 58 cents or so added to that 178.67 gives us closer towards that 2825 is where we think this RSP is going to be heading towards, which means from 187 to 208, you're talking about 20 points or so, which is a little more than 10% on the EQ-weighted RSP as well. So that's the upside that we think will get achieved. So will be QQQ's upside to 670, and so will the Dow Jones Industrial upside to 53,400. And the transports, however, is got way more upside from 16,000 going almost to 20,000. That's close to 4,000. That's a bit too high for it to achieve at the same period. So that may take a little longer to achieve that level, because if you're this is a major breakout and has been lagging, this breakout from 12 to 16, 4,000 out of 16 is 25% additional rally. That's way too much to be achieved at the same time as when the industrial kind of reaches from 47 to 53. So that's almost also 47 to 53. We're talking about 6,000 levels, a little over 10%. So we'll have to see how this transportation gets by the time Dow and QQQ and EQ-weighted S&P reaches their targets. Now, the last part of it, I talked about Jordi Visser. He's columnist. This is his LinkedIn column. He talked about this whole idea. This is the LinkedIn column. He points to his video. He talked about this profit margins are expanding. Nothing much fundamentally has changed. AI's demand is extremely aggressive across industries. And this part about the silent IPO is the key point that he raised, that think about how IPOs happen. Insiders load some of their shares, some of their ownership to broader shareholders. The broader shareholders into crypto now are getting it through the ETFs, making it more affordable. 100,000 coin is very difficult for a broad shareholder to own. But if you're buying one of these ETFs, and there are several of these ETFs now, Fidelity has its own called FBTC, Grayscale has it for a while called GBTC, and so on. Those are $70, $80 a share. So they could be a broad set of investors, and now many are investing their 401k into the Bitcoin through the ETFs. And it was in the news, JP Morgan significantly amassed a lot of Bitcoin ETFs. They've been buying the IBIT as the iShares Bitcoin ETF that has by far the biggest liquidity and volume. So JP Morgan has been investing in the IBIT in the last few weeks of correction. So that was his point, that think of this as the IPO moment. The Galaxy Digital is a well-known crypto exchange. They had a big whale unloading of almost 9 billion of their crypto holdings. Again, diversifying out of their assets into into other kind of assets while they have the liquidity now. And then he also has Jordi Visser also has a YouTube site. We can send you the link. He talks about the weekly recap, does it weekly. He talks about the retail bloodbath that happened, especially in the crypto market, but brought the other the other indices down with it. So that was signs of a bottom on Friday. And his point is, if you look at the charts, yes, there are definite signs of that. But the bullish part of the banks staying strong, the equal weight S&P staying strong, as we showed there, was up quite a bit on Friday. It was up 0.84%. And then the transportation being so strong was up 1.58%. Are all strengths of a strengthening economy, strong economy with more upside in the market. Now let's look at the Bitcoin chart. And if you pan it out from a weekly perspective, this is a beautiful cup and handle on its own. 69,000 is the left brim, the bottom of the cup at 15,500 in the October 2022 low, coming up to 73,800 as the right brim. So, and then a handle from there and a breakout. So 15.5 to 73.8, you're talking about 58,300. Add to 73,800, 132,100. That's the target. We didn't quite get there. We went to 126. However, in this climb for the last 2 years or so, we can see a beautiful rising channel. Not joining all the peaks, but pretty much most of the peaks from the 73,800 to the last two peaks this year at 124 and closer to 126. And then we can see there have been some like spikes a little higher above that, but most of the peaks being joined at this top trend line, and a parallel to that is the bottom trend line, which joins all the lows at 49,200, this low that we had in April, 74,400. And now we seem to be headed down, but look at this beautiful wedge formation. This kind of a wedge, if you join the peaks and the lows, is what we call as a falling wedge, and it's a bullish pattern. Typically what happens is market reverses from a falling wedge and reclaims back to from where it dropped. So which means if we can reverse from this falling wedge, maybe we might test the low end of this trend line. I'll show you a bit on the 4-hour chart where there is a slight possibility that we might panic some more of the sellers to sell the weak hands, and then the strong hands pick it up. And that might mean a low end of the wedge is around that where the trend line meets is closer to the 96,000. And I'll show you a technical chart pattern where that's a possibility. But if you do get that, that's a buying opportunity in our opinion. And so is Jordi, because this could reverse higher. And if you look at the top end of the channel now, that's climbing that trend line towards exactly where that level is, 132,000 target of this cup and handle pattern. So that's where we think is Bitcoin headed in the next couple of months. And if you look at the 4-hour chart, this is the head and shoulder that could technically be forming. 106,000 was the neckline from where it broke, the left shoulder at 114. From there, the head at 116,400, the right shoulder lower than the left shoulder at 111,100. So 106 to 116, you're talking about 10,000 points, $10,100. $10,100 from 106.3 is 96,200. So 96,200 is a possibility. We didn't quite get there. If any, we got a double bottom test at 98.9 and 99.2. The second bottom tested with a higher low on the RSI, higher low on the MACD. So if any, we might have already bottomed. And if any, this could be an ascending, like a double bottom, W-shaped recovery. So 98 to 105, that's roughly, you're talking about close to 6,000, little less than 6,000, maybe 5,600, added to the 104,500, that's 110,100, close to this 200 period moving average, near 110,300. So that's possibility. We got to see what happens right now. The 240-minute is hovering around the 103, 104,000. If that breakout, clean breakout out at 104,000 is also where we can see the 50 period moving average is 104,500. So if we are able to break that 50 period, then a climb towards 110 is what we expect next week. However, if this fails and bears again pound on it, then don't rule out this 96,000 test. And if you do get that, it would be a buying opportunity in our opinion, looking back again at this bullish falling wedge where it meets the trend line at around that 96. That said, if you look at the ETF, sorry, not the ETF, but the Ethereum's chart, which is another crypto, this is a cup and handle where the cup is actually from that 48,065. It tested in November 2021, fell all the way to 883 as the low around 2022, and then recently tested a higher high from the 48.65 to 49.55. And then look at the handle pullback. And as the handle pullback is coming, literally, this is weekly, every week, you see reversals. It never closes towards the lows of the week. That would have been a bearish sign. Every week, it tends to reverse higher and close from the lows of the week. And so these are kind of bullish reversal wicks of the candles, always kind of reversing off. And then we see that it kind of falls along a falling channel and kind of always tests it and climbs back higher. The most recent one dipping below it, but then now that is way above from where it closed at low end of the channel. So if this breakout happens from this cup and handle, that upside is significantly higher. You're talking about 883 to 49.55, close to $4,100 added to 4,900. That's 9,000. So that's the target on Ethereum, and we believe that all these Ethereum treasury company, whether it's Tom Lee's, Bitmine, BMNR, we know that Cathy Wood has been piling onto it, and many other institutional investors. BMNR, the SharpLink, SBET, those treasury companies and Ethereum ETFs will do extremely well if this kind of a climb comes in. So right now, 35.15 is key. We need to watch if it's able to take out from the declining channel. Right now, that's closer to the 4,000, break above, and then break out of this key right brim at 49.55, and volume picks up as that breakout comes. That could be a very bullish sign. So while Bitcoin may have a reversal from here and go test that top end of the channel on this cup and handle pattern at 132, percentage wise, it may not be as big a move as Ethereum can see. And Ethereum is what Tom Lee's point has been lagging now. It's turn for it to have a significant climb in the next few months. Solana is also catching a lot of attention as a crypto that seems to be helping stable coins. It's a kind of a, call it a blockchain technology that's getting a lot of popularity. Bank of America and others have been investing on this. So this is also a beautiful cup and handle. The cup from 259 to 264 with a base near 8. So 8 to 264, you're talking 256 added to 264. That's getting us closer to the 520 level once this breakout comes. From there, it formed a shorter cup. This was a deeper cup, and then a shorter cup formed in the last 12 months or last 14 months. And then now this handle is forming. So if that breakout comes from 95 to 253, that measures to 412. But the bigger cup from 259 to 8 to 264, that measures to 520. So Solana has strong upside as well. And the ETF to play that is SOLT. It's a 2x leveraged Solana ETF. And it could be a great play to buy it here on weakness, expecting this cup and handle. And finally, XRP is another crypto. It's an altcoin that's also getting a lot of attention as a blockchain that many are looking at, that institutional investors are expressing interest. This one is a beautiful double bottom at 1.61. The second bottom was higher than that at 1.74. This is also a bit of a cup from 1.6 to 3.6. You're talking about close to 2.05 or so added to 3.66. That's almost measured to 5.71. So that's the measured target on XRP from somewhere around 2.31 going to 5.71. That's a factor of 100%, like double move in the span of the next couple of months. So when we think XRP's target will be over 5.7, Solana's target is closer to near-term 412, but a bigger chance of the bigger cup and handle taking it to 520, Ethereum's target taking it to 9,000, and Bitcoin's target from its weekly chart going towards the 132 are all in the cards. We are extremely bullish. So in summary, Dow's effect to the 50,000 level, as pointed by Barron's, may come sooner this time. And we believe that from the chart of the Dow Jones, that target is 53,400. So in the next couple of months, we could expect to see a climb from 46, 47,000 towards that 53. You're talking about 6,000 or so climb to get there. 6,000 or 47, yeah, 47.53 is about 6,400 or so is where this could climb into. Transports are looking very bullish if they are able to break out finally above 16,500. That'd be a solid 4,000 point move on that. And that could mean that they could be a significant 25% upside in the transports index. QQQ has a beautiful cup and handle, maybe about a 10% or so climb to that key level of 669, 670, closed near 609. Nice reversal candle here on the Friday when it closed towards where it opened, and tested the 50 period very successfully. So that, in our opinion, could be resume climb on the QQQ. And the Equi-weighted S&P has got more upside towards the 208 level. It's got its own cup and handle breakout. It had a nice move of 0.84% on Friday. While there is this bit of a 20 going below the 50 is kind of a signal of call it a bearish cross. It's called, some people call it the silver cross, but we believe that not silver is actually the bullish side. This is the bearish side. 20 going silver is when the 20 goes above the 50. This is the 20 going below the 50. But we've had that in the past. Those are false signals, and 20, and then we quickly reclaims back the climb. So we think that is a possible. Like look at here, that it tends to kind of come close to crossing, and it doesn't, then still resumes a climb. We think that it will continue and get to the 208 is very much in the cards for the RSP, the Equi-weighted S&P. And then we talked about the cryptos, Jordi Visser's articles, his beautiful explanation of why crypto is having its, in particular, Bitcoin is having its IPO moment, his YouTube video, and then this beautiful chart tells us it all, that it's not the bullish rise is very much intact. The channel has not broken. For Bitcoin to lose that bullish climb, it would have to break below 95,000 for this lower end of the channel to break. Hasn't done that yet, has been successfully climbing. If any, this consolidation that we saw from the last peak at 126 is a beautiful falling, bullish falling wedge. Bullish falling wedge is usually resolved to the upside, and that upside measured on this cup and handle from 69 to 15.5 to 73 is 132,100, which is the top end of these channels where we think Bitcoin is headed. And Ethereum, in our opinion, once that explosive breakout above 5,000 comes, can go towards 9,000. Solana's upside breakout is towards 520 from where it's right now near 161. So that's a factor of 3x move. And XRP is a factor of a little more than 2x, from 2.3 at least to a 5.7 or so is where we think the XRP could be headed. Good luck investing. We'll talk to you next week. Thank you for your time.